Hey, g'day guys, it's Calvin from the Cartoon Company. I was out and about yesterday and my life didn't quite go to plan, and on the way home I ended up at another mate's place, and it does turn out that a lot of my mates do tend to drive Lexus powered vehicles. Some of them is because I've met them through doing 1UZs, and of course we've got a similar interest, which is 1UZ engines. However, this guy I've known for a long time, and we actually met through another vehicle that we'll go have a look at in a minute, which happens to be a Morris Minor. It's not your normal Morris Minor though. But he was looking for a work ute, and since I've known him, he had driven a 1987 Toyota Hilux flat deck single cab that had the big, I think it was a 2 litre. I think it might have had a 3Y in it. Japanese import, full emission spec that he never did anything to, ever. I might have changed the oil, but pretty much he drove it. And he was changing things around a little bit, and he was getting out of the rat race, moving into the country. And I'm sitting at his property now that he's done that. It is completely off the grid, so he's not connected to any external power sources at this property, and you wouldn't know it. It's a normal property. But as part of that process, he also decided to upgrade the ute, which surprised me immensely. And the resulting ute he got was the one I'm sitting in, which I'd actually dealt with the previous owner, who never put the money in to wire it properly, and the wiring was a massive mess. I'll actually see if I can find a few videos. It was before I really did a lot of videos. But this ute got a massive tidy up, and the result is the product we've got today. Tom pretty much just drives it like his 87 Hilux with the 3Y in it. His Lexus powered Hilux, he just jumps in and he drives it, and it's his work truck. Uses it whenever he goes out. He doesn't go out every day. Tends to hide at his little place, but like me. And it's a great truck. So let's have a look around it, and we'll have a bit of a chat and see what you think. Inside this ute, it's just a normal Hilux. Got a pair of slightly upgraded seats. It's got a set of Recaros in there. The dash is all standard, and that all works like normal. And we've got an extra little oil pressure gauge just down here. You'll see there's a bit of wiring running across the floor. There's a wideband unit tucked in under the seat. He got one of these Spartan widebands, and it actually works pretty good. It's running on a computer, aftermarket computer that I'd rather not mention too much of. I'm not a massive fan, but I can make them go alright. And I've spent a long time actually sorting out this vehicle to run properly. We'll just fire it up, have a listen before I head out under the bonnet. So it sits and idles just fine. Aftermarket computer with the gauges going there, wideband going in, everything's looking pretty good. As per normal, this is a normal working Hilux. And actually, I got an email the other day with regard to Hilux conversions and two-wheel drive conversions and what you can do with them. And this ute would have made the perfect video to go with that email, and I went and left my laptop behind. But we'll answer a few questions regarding that email anyway. Now, if you want to use the standard Hilux box, which this one's got the standard Hilux gear knob upside down, yep, definitely upside down, Hilux gearbox. So this one has got a G52 in it, and Tom's got plenty of toys in the shed, so he doesn't need to drive this one too hard. And this gearbox is lasting okay, but it's not ideal. If I was building a conversion from scratch, I would be putting an R150 in it. because I've just replaced hundreds of G52s, and I get guys say that, hey, I've got a ute that's done 10 years on a G52. Yeah, but the failure rate is quite big with them, so it's not something that I would choose to do. I sit the G52 in the standard position, or very close to it, so I don't have to modify the drive shaft. I didn't fit this motor in, it's sitting on my mounts, and I fixed all the stuff ups with it. And if you had a wiring stuff up video, this was a pretty massive one. There was wires everywhere, all over the place. And the funniest thing with it is I put most of it back to standard. So I only modified what needed to be modified. I found problems with the horn in it. And that was one of the funny things. I couldn't find the horn wiring, and they'd been cut off. There was another button on the dash for the horn, because the guys in the past that tried to wire it couldn't even make a horn work. It was disgusting. So I've had the dash loom out, I've had all under the guards out, I've had the whole thing to pieces. So externally, she's just a normal old Hilux. So in the brake department, you'll notice the calipers aren't quite normal. So it's got a set of big brakes on it. They're off a Nissan Skyline. So that's an R32 Skyline with a different rotor on it. Now that rotor will be off a super custom high ace van. In the back end, the brakes are just normal drums. That's still standard. And of course the tray does get used. It gets stuff put into it all the time. I didn't think he had a cat. There's definitely been a cat there. So under the bonnet. So we've got a Gen 1, we can see by the fuel rails, Gen 1. So the wiring was one that Tom bought. It came in a braid, and it was the bare basics of the loom, and it doesn't actually look too bad. But I have been through this loom in multiple ways. When Tom bought this wiring loom, he wanted wideband control. It didn't come with wideband control. He wanted idle speed control, so it idled when it was cold. It didn't come with that, so I've modified that into it. He wanted proper acceleration enrichment, and because there was no idle speed control, there was also no TPS, throttle position sensor. He wanted air temp correction. It didn't come with that. So this is a bare basic loom that was sold to him as a plug and play setup that wasn't suitable for his job. It was cheap, but then I had to pull it all to bits and fix it properly, and we could have put a better computer in for the same amount of money. He will never be using one of these computers again because of that, and for the time we spent stuffing around with it, we could have put in a better computer for the same or less money. So you have to be careful with just buying the cheapest. So that's a good example of why we don't just buy the cheapest. A bit of research, a bit of time, and it would be much easier to work with. So in here we've added a 2-wire idle speed control unit. So that's a kit that I sell. Plugs in, 2-wire PWM, so even your bare basic computers can run that unit. You'll notice well before I did my throttle body video, there's the modification of the throttle body. Intake, aluminium tube coming down to a pod filter. He's meant to be putting in a cold bit. For the wiring for the alternator, I put a big main fuse in here. And as I said, I've had all this wiring, fuse box. You'll notice there's an extra relay in here. So I modified the factory fuse box to run some of the wiring. And then I've been through all in behind here. Oh, this one. I remember this one. So on this vehicle, now the alternator is here. So low the power steer pump. When it started, the alternator was on the passenger side. Oh, so this one was quite memorable with the alternator wiring. It was factory on the left side. Alternator on the UZ's on the right side. And you'll notice I'm facing the right way. So this is the right and this is the left. Okay, I'm not turning around. This is... and what it had is it had wiring running back and forth across the vehicles. So the wiring actually factory started on the right and it went to the left. And then when they'd wired it, they'd run a new lot of wiring from the left back to the right. Kind of seemed a bit much wiring, so I cut it all out, moved it all on the one side, and it's much neater. So I've had that whole loom to pieces to sort this out. And I put most of it back to standard, but that was one bit that wasn't standard. Radiator. So that is a stock standard Hilux radiator, diesel core in it with a big fan on it. Bottom hose has been modified. Okay, so the actual core is standard, bottom hose is modified. Originally it was wired on a standard computer, so it had a fan switch. That is now controlled out of the aftermarket ECU, which was another feature that wasn't wired in. I'm just going to turn the key on and we'll have a listen. Not sure you heard that. I'll do that again. We'll put it down here. There's the fuel pump running and then switching off. So factory Toyotas don't prime. This is on an aftermarket computer, so it does prime. And it's a safety feature. So it was just running all the time. So that's kind of crap. You should never ever wire your fuel pump directly to the ignition. If your car rolls over, you're in a crash, you want that fuel pump to turn off. So that is a safety feature that should be wired into every single setup, every single conversion. We can't get them legal over here, though I have seen some on the road with that, but it's part of our safety checks. So with your fuel pump, I want to keep you safe, make sure it's wired properly, that it switches off, and there's several ways of doing that, and I'll probably do a separate video on that. Power steer pump. UZ pump. It's very close on a two-wheel drive to the steering box, so the idle up is gone. And I normally run the lines up the guard. And I normally like to run a cooler. This one never got a cooler, unfortunately. It was a repair, and there was lots of other things to do. For the braking, just a note on that one. Wallwood proportioning valve. So it was put in to the main line that runs down to the back brakes. If you've lowered your ute and you're not putting huge amounts of weight on the back, there's a factory proportioning valve for the back brakes under the back of the vehicle. And on a two-wheel drive like this that is low, a really good solution is one of these wallwood proportioning valves. And I fitted a lot of them and allows you to adjust it right. We put them under the bonnet for a reason. To make it legal, you can't have it over here to be adjusted by the owner or by the driver. And it solves the problem. You put them in, you set them, you forget them. Great way of setting up those back brakes and getting it just right. So that's really cool. With the big brakes on the front, it does help a lot getting the proportioning right because you put a lot more braking to the front. So it's a great way of doing it, and these brakes work really, really well. This one I had a little issue with the gearbox wiring. There was no allowance, and it started off, the wiring was on a loom in this area, the battery box somewhere. So I've run a loom across and down to the gearbox, which is in, oh, no it isn't, yes it is, there it is. So there's gearbox wiring going down, there's the main start wire, and fuel pump or fan wiring that'll be. What did I put in here? Oh yeah, that's a fan. It was a little while since I did this. In the exhaust manifold department, it's got a set of logs, dirty old logs. They have got a bit of a crack at the moment, so Tom's going to have to get it and fix that. Fuel filter, I normally put it under the back, but make sure you put a fuel filter into the systems. And we actually ran the wiring with the loom, made a little grommet. There was a big hole here anyway that had been carved in to run the standard loom through when the Lexus motor was originally wired on a standard computer. And that was sorted out. You notice there's no extra covers. We've taken all the plastic covers off, keeps it nice and simple. And here's a better shot. The exhausts are pretty basic. They're not a set of ours. Someone else had made those ones up. Sump department. Now I'm often asked, what sump do we use? It's sitting on the ground. Let's have a lie down. So here is, oh, can we see it? Oh, there it is. So there's a sump, there's your drag link there. It's a bit oily, this one. And there is the sump. So we use a front sump that's been moved forward or modified a little bit. I'll do another video on a sump extension that I've got. And this one is running a sway bar. Being petrol, it does have a sway. Where is it? This was a petrol one, so it ran a sway bar. In the exhaust department, you can see on a two-wheel drive, it's very, very close to your steering. No, to your suspension arms. If you get a Sora or SC400 motor, the factory headers with a little bit of a trim on these top arms can fit. A front sump exhaust manifold will not fit in a two-wheel drive vehicle. They are far too tight. I also, you can see I marked the lines. This was an already set up system with a remote filter. Wasn't one of mine, but we worked with that. Where did I put the oil pressure switch? Oh, yep, oil pressure switch is down in the factory position. Here we can just see it down in there. If I go down here, oh, I can't get it in my video. Now, where did I put this computer? I put it under here. The aftermarket computer is mounted up there. It's sitting, actually there's a piece that runs through. This was a no aircon vehicle, so there's the bracket, so there's the vent that runs between the heater fan and the heater box, and the ECU's mounted on top of that. We will find some relays in here as well. So there's some additional relays and fuses for the ECU and for ignition power. I am often asked what is the best setup for a vehicle like this. There's no real best setup. So best is going to depend on your needs. I see the boys in America, there's lots of very cheap early model motors around. The early model motors now are needing a lot of tidying up. And if you look at some of my prep videos, you'll see there's a lot of time spent. Injector seals, starter motors, power steer pumps. There's a lot to do to get them right. Cam out water pump tensioners, the whole lot there. So I do tend to prefer the VVTIs. Also, the wiring on a lot of the old motors is getting very tired. I'm working on a few things to sort that out. And that's why we are using a lot of aftermarket computers on these older motors. And set up with an aftermarket computer, they do go really, really well, and they're going to go really, really well for a long, long time. I do, however, also like the VVTI motor because they do make a bit more power in a standard form. So I really like them as well. If you're running autos, I can make any of them work. Some of the early autos aren't quite as easy with the wiring because they need a second speed sensor signal to really work properly. So I like the 20 series on a lot of those. So I'll sort of have different setups or different ways of doing it. If I'm doing a four-wheel drive factory auto, I have to go a 20 series, non-VVTI, because they're really simple to do. They're really basic and I think really good value for money. Converting a VVTI auto to the 5-speed to four-wheel drive, I've done a few and there's a cost involved. I looked at casting up a proper housing, but there was not enough demand 10 years ago when we were doing that sort of stuff. So best is going to be subjective to every job. So asking me which best, I really want to know about what job you've got, what setup you've got, and where you are in the world relative to the parts that you can get. We probably should have a listen to Tom's ute making some noise and see what the exhaust sounds like. Where is the exhaust? Tucked under here. So we always want to know what that 1UZ sounds like. And yes, Tom is a rev head. Under the bonnet, Induction noise is pretty massive. Another thing that was really interesting when I did this ute, and quite memorable, this has got an old series of cut down sump that we used to use, and we found better ways to do it now. However, it never had a light on the dash, and I'm quite a stickler for making everything on the dash work properly. I like the factory tacho to work, and I reinstalled the factory oil pressure switch. So that was on the engine. Yeah, so this one probably shouldn't have it running. The oil pressure switch down there, but it's also got it had a manual gauge here. The old style, just a mechanical gauge. Well, look at this oil pressure, and this is sitting at idle, just on 30 psi. What was really memorable about this ute was I wired it all up, got it all going, and I was taking it back to Tom, taking it for a test drive, and you'd come in a few situations, or hard acceleration, we're out tuning it, and the oil light would flick on, just momentarily. So the oil pressure switch was coming on about £7. The oil gauge never showed a problem. Never. It wasn't able to react fast enough to the loss of oil pressure. And we've actually overfilled the sump by about 500 mils. So every time he does an oil change, it's just a little bit overfill. And I suspect there's probably no baffle in the sump. It's on the list of to-dos, of course, and a lot of these projects have to-dos, unfortunately. And it hasn't caused a problem since, but we would see that oil light flick on while we were tuning it. The gauge, once you watched it really closely, you'd see it drop a little bit, maybe £5 difference, but it still showed oil pressure. So just be really aware of that. And it was a good reason to have the factory oil light on the Hilux actually working. If I'm running aftermarket computer, I often run an oil pressure switch into the computer, an electronic one, and we'll talk about that. And I use that to control the light on the dash, and then I have logging ability of the oil pressure. So on another video we'll chat about that. So a few other things that we did while we were giving this ute a tidy up was we sorted the clutch. So this is a real common problem I see, and they don't have enough free play. So this one we solved it by changing the slave cylinder. It had a really boogy setup on the slave, so I mounted a 3/4 Skyline one on it. I went down from the Toyota 13/16 down to the Nissan 3/4. The clutch inside had been run for a period of time with no free play, so it was a bit damaged, and it's still in there today. It's kept it going, but I do feel it's getting to the end of its life, so we will be doing that at some stage, and I do hope to put my internal release bearing in it when that box comes out. We also popped the diff out and changed the diff ratio, and I can't actually remember what it was, sorry. I believe this one was a factory, either a 4.1 or a 4.3. I could probably look on the tag actually. So the tag has the trans code, G52, but it doesn't have a diff code, which is normally there. So this was a 22R petrol originally. Actually the cert plate, got a bit of a list on this one. It's got the Nissan calipers on it. Wheels. And it actually just says Toyota, it doesn't say Toyota mod, which is a bit of a pain when they do that. And finished 2017, certed 2017. But I think it's enough talking about Tom's ute. Let's go into a shed and have a look at his other little toy. So as we wander into Tom's shed, There's a Falcon here. Underneath there is a turbocharged Valiant. Should we have a look, shall we? So there is Tommy's Valiant Coupe. Dirty old 265. Running this Holly carburetor. But however, there's some lines, there's some wires, and there's these injecty things. And there's this rotary muffler right there. And I put it in through, I did a mil-spec loom through some firewall plugs. I got away with a 12 pin there and a 2 pin for the starter. And that's his cruiser. It goes okay. So this is the second motor Tom's had in the Valiant. The first one was a box of beer motor, done unknown number of Ks, that he shoved in the hole, and we set it all up just in case disaster happened, and disaster didn't happen. So he put his had a forged motor built, and that's in the hole now, and looking pretty good. The loom's pretty happy. I sorted all the wiring. It looks pretty neat and tidy in there. Very happy with it. Little intercooler tucked at the front, pretty discreet. But we're actually here to look at this one. So in Tom's shed, here is his other little toy. This was a bit known when I was in Hamilton, and everyone would say about this Morris Minor. Inside we see we've got a cage. Actually quite hard to see. We've got a cage. There's a helmet because it's his toy to go to the drags. Auto transmission. We're not going to go under the dash. I haven't fixed the wiring on this. So we have 1950 Morris Minor. And under the bonnet, yeah, that's not a normal Morris Minor engine. And it's gone through many forms over the years with Tom. But a couple of little turbos on some log manifolds, a bit of an intercooler, water lines running off for the intercooler. Somewhere in there it does run a G1 Link ECU, and that's doing the job. And no matter how hard I talk to Tom, he's quite set in his ways of keeping that. So this is a 4.2 Chev V6. I believe they made them by just taking a 305 and cutting 2 cylinders off. And it is actually road legal. There's a cert plate for it. And there is a warrant of fitness showing it was till the 9th of 2019. So that is road legal to drive around, which is pretty impressive. And it's definitely Tom built. All built by Tom. You're polishing your Valiant. Look at that.
Getting the dust off it.
Bloody dust. Now, Tom, we're gonna grab you. So, Tommy,
I've got my best clothes on.
this is how we work.
Yeah.
In real clothes, mate. Anyway, your Mori. When did you get your Mori? How long have you had that thing?
Since last century. I finished building it in 1998.
98. So that's when you put it on the road.
Yes.
98.
Yes.
And you got it. How long did it take you to build it?
4 years.
4. Was it turbocharged when you first did it?
No, just aspirated. Just 4 barrel and HEI.
And off to the drags.
Yeah.
How fast did it go?
Did 49.
And then it wasn't fast enough.
No. Then I got with the carb I got down to 13.8. And then I put fuel injection in it, which made it 13.6. And then, yeah, from there.
Turbocharged.
10.6.
10.6. That's the fastest you've been turbocharged?
Yeah, but it's got shitloads more in it. Lots more in it.
I do remember a time when we were road tuning it at a certain down a certain spot, and you went to the drags and went a bit faster after that one.
Yeah.
And then time on the dyno and development time.
Yep.
Would you do it again?
Fuck yeah, it's fun.
It's fun.
It's fun.
Exactly. And you get the pleasure out of building cars, don't you?
Oh,
not just driving them.
Oh, very much. It's the fun's in building them as well. Actually working out all the ups and downs of building cars. Yeah.
And your Hilux, your V8 Hilux Ute.
Yeah.
Of course, I did discuss the replacement of it was an 87 Hilux, your big 2-litre, and then you've got the V8.
Yeah. But that was really, I can't say that I did that. I got it as an unfinished project.
That's correct.
Yes. Very unfinished.
And then you imposed upon my garage, and I spent a large portion of my life fixing all the stuff-ups. I'm actually doing a series on wiring stuff-ups. I do one UZ wiring stuff-ups, and your Ute could have featured very well in that because it was a major stuff-up. Yeah. But it's good now.
But even like I said, even from my wiring experience point of view, even I said it was rough as guts. It's and that's coming from me, which is saying a lot.
But now it's good.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Beautiful. Anyway, Valiant. Look at this. And this will be our little, we just got to go a couple of little things on this today. As you can see, Tommy is a rev head, and he just can't help himself but modify everything.
No.
See, I did some wiring on the old Falcon in the background there too.
Yeah.
I've wired, and I don't know if I've touched, I've refused to touch the wiring on that fat Mog, eh? I keep threatening I want to cut it out. I'm going to cut that out one day. One day.
That's fine.
That rat's nest
Hasn't had any fires.
hasn't had any fire. Yep. How do we define if it's good? It hasn't caught fire.
No fires.
No fires. That is a good thing.
A bit of smoke now and then, but no fire.
And of course, I spent hours fixing all the wiring on this old girl, and that's now good. It looms pretty good. Hey guys, I'm working on this Hilux Ute. We've put a different auto speed control unit on this one. I'm yet to run a hose, and I've tapped out the throttle body, so we've put a fitting on there. Removed the traction control. There's an air temp sensor, aftermarket computer air temp sensor inside. I'm still in the process of just tidying up, but we're going to look at the remote oil filter. Talked about these before. Here's the oil filter over here. So on the oil filter, the oil goes into the oil filter through those holes, which you can see there's like a one-way valve in there. So it's important that they go correct, and it leaves the filter to the engine via the sender. Often pays to check. So this one's got a bit of a fitting down on the side of the engine. Oh, I can't really see it, but it's got a bit of a maze fitting down there. So what I've done is I've tapped in the start wire, right straight to the battery, checked it. We're just going to check the oil. Comes out that outside edge, so give it a quick crank here. And there's the oil coming out the side. So that one's actually all hosed up correct, that's real good. So I'm actually going to take it out. We're going to put a oil pressure fitting for the gauge inside, and then pop it back together. Hey, hope that's helpful. Hey everyone, I'm working on Tom's ute here. It's been getting a little bit of a tidy up. So wiring's had a tidy. There's not much wiring left. It's actually running a Megasquirt, which isn't my favourite, but I can make them go alright. We've changed the idle speed control unit. That's a nice simple one, good for jet boats and items like that. And I've modified the throttle body so the air goes directly from the throttle body to the idle speed, keeping it nice and simple. I've put the one-way valve in for the brake booster, which is pretty important. A lot of them are lacking that. And there's air temp sensor tucked into the throttle body. Power steer lines, I've given them a bit of a tidy up. They were looking a bit ugly. Alternator wiring. The wiring on this ute was pretty disgusting, and I've actually put most of the vehicle's wiring nearly back to standard. Batteries been moved over to this side, nice and neat and tidy. There's a loom underneath the radiator, a couple of bits of wiring to do on the radiator yet, and the air filter is going to go in this area here, of course. What I thought I'd talk to you about is clutch setup. Now, pretty common on 1UZs that the clutch isn't quite right. I see it all the time. So if we go in here, hopefully my phone will give us some light. No, we'll get some light, shall we? Here's some light. That's better. Right. So when you're setting it up, I think it's really important that we get the clutch and the brake pedal as close to level as we can. Maybe the clutch thing a little bit lower. And then set it up so there's the push rod is not pushing on that master cylinder at all. A lot of people, the clutch doesn't work, so they crank the free play out of it, pushing the master cylinder on a little bit, and it holds the clutch on a little bit all the time, and it wears clutches out. Causes them to slip, all sorts of ugly stuff. Don't do it. It's bad. So set them up like that. That's really nice. If you're having trouble with that, I do sell a bigger master cylinder. That will solve the issue. And I sell a lot of them. So there we go. A lot of the aftermarket clutches, and even the ones I sell, need just that little bit more travel. But that one, see, that's quite nice. It's not doing anything. It's got quite a nice bit before it actually starts to engage there, so that's quite nice. We are working with a worn clutch here. Now if we're going to go underneath here, we're going to look at the fork. So here we go. Here's our fork. Oh, here we go. And there's the slave. This one I've mounted a Nissan slave. Now it's really important once you put it all together, just to get in here and check you can push it back. And you've got plenty of go back into there. So as the clutch wears, the fingers are going to come out. It's going to push your push rod back into your slave. Okay? So that one's got plenty. It's got about 12 to 15 mils of movement back into the slave. And I've had the boot off, checked my extension, and it's about 4 or 5 mils away from the end. So it's not going to fall out. The clutch feels really nice in this. It's got an ugly bracket on it, but it does feel very, very nice. So when you're setting up your clutch, make sure you got your free plays right, and things will be much, much easier for you. Okay. This one I actually put a braided line up above it, running down to the slave. There is a braided line, which is quite neat and tidy. We'll just have to go up the top and have a look, shall we? Oh, we can't see the braided line, but I'm actually running the factory clutch master at the moment. I'm putting one that has the fitting out to the left, because this one comes out the top and it's a bit ugly. So we're going to sort that later on in today when another one arrives. So hope that's helpful in setting up clutches. Make sure you have some free play at the top. If not, I have bigger master cylinders, or change the slave at the bottom. Okay, hope that's helpful. Hey Tom, so got your ute here, and I thought I'd drive it out to do the cooling system, and the clutch has been working really good, so I jump in the ute, I've had it running like this, you know, you can hear it running. And I jump into it, and I slam my foot on the clutch, and it stopped. I'm like, oh fuck. See in here? See this ugliness? Hear the relay? Hear the fuel pumps and relays go there clicking? I think I'm going to have to fix that, eh? This guy's been everywhere. Don't worry, I'll sort it. Oh, oh. Righto. I'm into it. Everyone, here on a ute that I've just been working on. It's a mid-90s Toyota Hilux. Started its life as a petrol. It's no longer a petrol. Came to me, it was a hell of a mess. Wiring was ugly. The whole ute was pretty ugly. So we've given it a bit of a tidy up. Here we go. So, wiring loom. Goes through the grommet there on the firewall. It got a Megasquirt, as you know, if you've talked to me a bit. I'm not a great fan, but I make them go okay. Put an idle speed control unit on there, so because the Megasquirt can't control it. It's the same sort of unit that we use on jet boats, away from the standard one. Means that when you turn it off, it doesn't need time to reset for the stepper. Steppers are great for road cars, but for some other applications, not so good. This one had a cold start injector that's been taken off, under the manifold's been blanked off. New pipe hose going around to the throttle body. This one also got, it's got running a standard master, but we've put a smaller slave on it. We're running a Nissan 3/4 slave. Proper air brake line for the booster with the one-way valve, it's really important. This one's running a Woolwood proportioning valve that was already in there. Alternator was rewired, and we put in a big mega fuse in here. So there's the fuse tucked in there, nice and neat and tidy. Factory fuse box has been modified. So it's got an extra relay, which is the fan relay. There's a couple of relays inside for the injection. There's the fan fuse, and there's the EFI main fuse that protects that circuit. Fan all tucked in neat and tidy, it's all nice. And batteries moved to this side, was already there. It's got a remote oil foot, I'm not a fan, but they work okay. Going inside, I've got my bit of tuning gear on the ground here, but there's some fuses and relays. A couple of relays, an EFI relay and a fuel pump relay. And the Megasquirt's tucked behind the glove box, and you can't see it anymore. The back of the glove box was all cut out, so it's actually tucked up there. In the dash department, there was already an oil pressure gauge, but I've also made the oil light on the dash go. We'll go around, we'll start it up and we'll have a listen. We also put a taller diff in it, so it drops the revs at 100 k's a bit, which is a bit nicer. On the dash, this body's actually done 456,000 k's, so it's done a few k's. So we've got a battery light and an oil light tucked in. She fires up pretty good. She sounds quite good, this ute. should be able to hear that okay. So she's coming along pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the overall result, and it's about to go back. I'm going to do some tuning on the way back and pick up the customer. He's going to do some tuning. He likes playing with the tuning side of things, and we'll set it up and get it back to him. Hey, I hope you enjoyed doing conversions. If you're going to do a conversion yourself, and try to do it right the first time, save me having to do fix-ups like this one. It was 78 hours last night when I finished the tidy up, and computer and quite a few parts and consumables and bits and pieces that we've done. So I hope that's helpful. Hi guys, so this is the cartoon Sump extension plate. Quick instruction on how to fit it up. You'll see the plate sits onto the sump like so, and then the sump, instead of having to notch out the back, you don't have to do that anymore. You just bolt this plate on. So the sump's going to then bolt on like that. Okay, so it moves the whole sump forward that far. So perfect for Hiluxes, perfect for surfs. Okay, so just as part of the fitting up, a couple of things you need to know. This hole and this hole, they go all the way through the sump pan and through the plate. Over on this side, there's two holes that are close together. So what you're going to need to do there is that hole there in the sump, the bolt's going to come through from the top. So it's going to come down and thread into this plate. So you will need to just drill that hole out. Okay, and then this hole is going to come up through. So either use a very short bolt, or you just whip through that through the sump there and allow for the hole through it. It comes through right close to a rib, so you may need to take that rib off. So that's pretty straightforward. Now this one isn't fitted with a dipstick, so you can put a dipstick anywhere along the front here. Just a Boss welded on. Being steel, it's quite easy to work with. And then a pickup needs to be modified to suit. Okay, the oil level sensor, blank that off. A frost bug's a good way to do that, or bake up a plate. And then the dipstick is going to need, the dipstick hole of course is going to be covered, so you need to sort that out as well. So I think that's the most of it. It's pretty easy to fit up, pretty straightforward. Hope that's helpful. Tom has a few chickens, and this fella turned up one day, Roger. He obviously sensed some girls around and just turned up. Look at his spurs in there. Can we get in close? Check at those spurs. Oh, mate. Yeah, don't stuff with Roger. He's actually a really kind rooster. Tom was joking that he was going to yell out "Charles your cock" while I was making my video. And well, that's his cock.